Hello, welcome back to the James Ramblin' Reviews for yet another episode. In today's episode, I've actually got another live action remake review for you because I reviewed Lilo and Stitch a few weeks ago and I actually did enjoy that film. But today we're actually going to be reviewing How to Train Your Dragon, the 2025 version of the 2010 film, the animated kind of classic from DreamWorks. And so there's all of that. I'll give you a bit of context right now though, and then I'll give my rating out of 10 and all of that later on. But what I will say is, when it comes to How to Train Your Dragon, I think I've only seen the first movie a couple of times because I had to watch it again just to kind of refresh my memory on what that film was all about before I went to see this one. And no, I didn't decide to review, How to Train Your Dragon 2010 because there's no point doing a video about the same movie twice, you know what I mean? So there's all of that, but I will just say that that's probably the only film in the franchise I've seen and this live action remake. I never really was that big into, How to Train Your Dragon. I would say as a kid I watched the Shrek movies a lot more than How to Train Your Dragon. So there's all of that, and you get to know that I'm not really like a super duper big fan. The idea of doing a live action remake is such a hit and miss concept now, especially because I enjoyed Lilo and Stitch, but normally I wouldn't really, be the person to be like, oh yeah, let's run out of our houses and go and see a live action remake. I'm like not somebody that's a big supporter of this concept, but one of my friends is a big fan of the How to Train Your Dragon franchise, and he was curious to see how they were going to pull off this movie because obviously with a live action remake you start to get sceptical. You start to wonder, oh no, they're just doing this for the sake of it, they're just doing this to make a bunch of money, and definitely it is a money making machine, and so there's all of that. So what this film is all about is just pretty much just the rinse and repeat of the original movie. So I will say, if you haven't seen the original film and you're wanting to just pass the time and have a film to watch, this is probably a film you're going to watch, right? Because it is just the same, plot summary, the same characters and all of that. Except there is a few things here and there they do change about the movie. And so what I will say is that this movie is kind of a mixed bag for me, where there are certain moments throughout the film where I really got invested in the visual effects, because the 3D glasses, you got to see this film in 3D because the way the dragons fly about and all of that. Like that, when you see Toothless, Toothless and Hiccup, they start to connect with each other, they start to do the test drive scene and all of that. Like that's a really, really impactful, immersive experience throughout the cinema. But I will say that there are moments where it's nothing like outstanding because you've seen this movie before, and there is some lines of dialogue that I think just work a lot better in the original film, because there's like funny moments in the original movie. And because it's animated, it has a little bit more charm to it. It has a little bit more where it could have had, a little bit more to it, where it was refreshing enough to see these characters moving around and all of that, so that when you see this live action remake, it's like, yeah, they're just kind of repeating things. They're kind of just repeating things that were in the original movie. And I will say as well, though, I would say Gerard Butler is my favourite performance in this movie, because he pretty much just acts like he was in the original film, but he brings the character to life, and he has a lot of fun, and so there is all of that. So I probably will give this movie like a 6 out of 10. Not the worst film. There's a few things I enjoyed about the movie, and I will be honest that the John Powell score with the big music did rope me in a few times, but the 4DX 3D glasses is probably one of my favourite parts throughout the film. And my friend did actually enjoy the movie, and one thing I noticed towards the end of this film was that people started clapping, but I was like, I just want to get out of the cinema now. I got the point of this is it really, and so there's definitely all of that. That is how I would feel about How to Train Dragon 2025. What I will say is, you don't have to go out and see this movie. You can always just go back and watch the original as many times as you want, because that movie already exists. And so there's definitely all of that. That is my review of How to Train Your Dragon 2025. It's just now it's getting a bit interesting for DreamWorks, because as soon as this movie makes a lot of money, you know exactly what is going to happen. So yeah, that's my review of How to Train Your Dragon. Stay tuned for more reviews like this one, and I hope you enjoyed this review. I may have a slightly different opinion to some other people who were absolutely raving about the film and saying it's one of the best films of the year. I just thought it was alright. It wasn't anything, incredibly special. So that's my review of How to Train Your Dragon 2025. I think I've said enough already. So yeah, stay tuned for more reviews like this. And yeah, bye.